my God. Marina Marraco, you told me this was going to be like the most boring episode, but I don't think it is. I think we're going to have so much to talk about.
Hi. I'm so happy to see you.
I'm so happy.
Where are you? In the North Pole? Is it really that cold in your house?
It is. Marina, I don't turn on, you know how people do that cryo freezing, you know?
Yes.
I just don't turn on the heat in my house, so I'm constantly getting cryo, you know? I mean, it's just trying to preserve this, Marina, whatever is left of my face.
Hyperbaric chamber there.
Yes, exactly. Okay, Marraco, you're probably the most cryptic person at all of Fox 5. And I guarantee this podcast episode is going to be so highly downloaded because people want to know about your life.
You're out of your mind. Yeah, there's nothing to tell. Hi, I'm Marina. Nice to meet you.
Oh, I think there's a lot to tell. I've been getting scoop about you. Apparently, you're obsessed with TJ Maxx and Home Goods.
True.
I've heard that
story.
Now, the other thing I found
with saving my money, which is what people don't tell you.
But wait, you save that much money at TJ Maxx and Home Goods?
Oh my God, yeah. I don't buy anything at full price. Sarah, I hit you up for like anything. I hit everybody up. I'm a shameless, I have a friend who's an engineer at Apple, and I'm like, hey, can I get $1 off my AirPods? And she's like, no, they don't do friends and family for this crap. Like, I will always try and knock $1 off of anything.
Really? I don't think I knew you were that cheap. Wow. So you're very frugal.
Yes. Yeah, honey. Rich people don't stay rich by giving away their money.
Oh, really? I don't know. I'm doing this thing where I'm manifesting wealth. And so I just I'm just like spending a lot, because Drake would rent a Phantom Rolls Royce until he manifested his own. So I'm going to start doing that.
I grew up in Miami. Everybody rents their Rolls Royce and they all live in efficiencies in the back. I mean, come on, give me a break. That's all BS. It worked out for him. It doesn't work out for the majority of people. You got to save your pennies. You got to count them, and you got to be, why are we giving so much money to everybody else? Like, I don't like to give money to people. Give me the money.
Wow. So, okay. So you are frugal. You're out there saving your coins. Are you into crypto too? Are you a big investor? I feel like you could be that.
No, I feel that people who say that don't have any idea what they're doing. I mean, if you're day trading, you're probably losing your money. It all goes, when you pay taxes, it all disappears. Unless you have a huge portfolio and you've got $1 million to invest, you're not making money in that. You're better off having a 401k and counting pennies, and then at the end being like my grandparents. Generational wealth, that's how you build it.
Wow. What'd your grandparents do? Did they end up wealthy when they died, or they just saved everything they had?
Oh my God, from my mom's side, I mean, both of them, neither of them had any schooling, I don't think, past high school, raised a family. They saved every penny, never got on a plane, never traveled. And when my grandfather passed, who sadly passed away during the pandemic of COVID-19, I mean, there were a lot of zeros in that bank account. Oh. And it was all from saving and saving and saving, and just go to the supermarket and checking everything. And I think there's a balance in everything. I'm not to that extreme. I do think you've got to live your life. I'm very much proponent of YOLO. But yeah, you got to save your money. That in the end, translated to my parents and then to me. And I think that's where the success is. And people who walk around because they want 1,000 G's, Gucci, Coochie, whatever, all over them. You're throwing your dollars away. That's not giving you anything. What is that what does that make me feel about you? That you're a brand whore? I don't care. I want to see your bank account.
This is the like it or not that I know of Marina Marraco.
Send me your bank account.
Do you own anything luxury? Do you own anything Gucci, Chanel, Louis Vuitton? Do you own any?
I do. Anything I've ever bought has been on a real type of site. It's always been secondhand owned. I've been gifted things of that nature. I've also returned, I've returned a Chanel bag once.
You can return things to Chanel? I tried to return something to Gucci, and they told me Gucci doesn't do returns.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah, I did.
What? They let you return? What happened? Yes. Well, why? You just didn't, did someone buy it for you? You didn't want it, or what?
Yeah, at the time someone bought it for me, and that person was, I thought, overspending and not in the financial state to do that. And this was a long time boyfriend. I was like, I'm not letting you spend this kind of money. This is stupid.
Marina, a boyfriend bought you a beautiful Chanel gift, and then you said to him, you can't afford this, so I'm taking it back for you? Marina, what?
I knew what his credit card debt looked like, and I was like, I want no part of this.
Did he break up with you after that, or you dumped him?
Oh, come on. No.
Have you ever been dumped, or what? You dump everyone? Look at you. I love the attitude. She's like, oh, who's dumping my ass?
No.
Okay, who?
It ended.
Oh my God, I love it. You're all right. So what's your deal anyway? You never talk about your relationship. So what's the story? Are you booed up or what?
I'm happy. I'm in a really good place. I'm in my early 30s, Sarah. I still have not gotten to the mid 30s, I will say.
What?
Despite popular belief, I'm not 45.
Is that what
I'm an
people
old
say to
soul.
you online? Do they think you're 45?
No, I think that people generally like can't pin my age. But this is like a phenomenon that I've been dealing with since I was 15. I was 15 and people thought I was 25. So they've always like aged me like 5 to 10 years higher, which is fine. I don't like take offense to it. But I think it's because it's the way I am. Like, I'm an old person. I'm an only child, and I grew up with parents who were 11 years apart. And I think that makes you an old person. Like, when dad is taking you to business dinners and you're dealing with all these, like, you know, worldly savants, like, you're opining at a really young age about shit you have no idea. And you're just talking, and then you believe it, and next thing you know, you're 20, and you're like, holy crap, I'm an old person.
Oh my God, Marina, this is my favorite interview so far. So you're happily in a relationship, which I love.
Thank you.
I hear you're engaged. What do you have to say about this?
That's news to me.
Do you think you'd be getting?
Okay,
wait,
look, I'm happy. Everything's great.
Okay.
And I hope it's forever, like everybody says, right? And I'm sure it'll be. And I have nothing else to add. No further comment.
Look, why are you so private? I think people wonder that, not only viewers and your fans, but I think people internally at Fox 5. Why are you so private?
I mean, I think my friends at work know like what the deal is. They've been to my house. They've met people in my life. I socialize with them outside of work. I think, I don't know, for me, in the public sphere, truly, I think when you are confronted with a situation like a guy showing up at your house at midnight dressed as a UPS driver who's been following you for months, that's kind of like, that shocks you to your core, and it really changes your perspective. Like, I'm naturally someone who's always like, my head is always on a swivel. People who leave their houses unlocked and they're like, okay, this girl's paranoid. No, I'm just like attentive. Like, I know what's happening. I've covered enough crap out there to know what can happen. So I think that kind of changes your perspective a little bit about like being public and putting pictures out there and everything nowadays. Like, you can really dig online and you can find things, and people do, and it's fine. A lot of what you find there isn't true either. Like, there are ways to obscure X, right? And to like try and maybe like I go a little bit more out of my way to change things so that it seems like one thing, but it's really not the other online, maybe.
Oh, you're kind of wait. But have you had a stalker? The story that you told, did that happen to you? Did some?
Yeah.
Okay, so when was this that a guy dressed up as a UPS?
This was in my previous market. This was down in Florida. I mean, he obviously had issues, and it was something that was like months coming. And when you go to the supermarket and you don't know who this person is that continues to accost you, and you're like, oh my God, it could be this person behind me. It could be, and like following your movements and on social media, like saying like this happened today. And I'm like, how the hell does this person know that? And the next thing you know, like, you have surveillance video of a guy keep repeatedly showing up at your house and dressing. It was a wild situation. Since then, I mean, there's always people out there who sadly are creeps. It is what it is. Like, this is the business we're in.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm no Kylie Jenner. Like, I don't have anybody, swimming naked in my pool, but I think that it's a reality. Like, people build this sort of like weird relationship with you through the lens that they believe is like a two-way street, and it's not. And for me, like, luckily it's just been me. I don't have children. I don't have like a huge family, so I'm not worried about that, but I can't imagine like being in that position. So like, why set a precedent now, putting everything out there? It's really hard to put back in the tube afterwards, right? Like, once you put it out there.
Oh my God.
So for me, it's just easier to be like, I don't need to sell myself out. Like, this is my life. I don't put pictures of my family, and it's fine. Like, I'm not one of these people. I travel, I go out to eat. Nobody needs to know what I'm doing. Like, that's for me. I also like don't feel like I need that constant like adulation from people, or like, yeah, look so hot. Look at that selfie. Like, that's just not me, which is fine. Like, I don't knock people who do it. It's just not my style.
Yeah, you're speaking about me, but I'm okay with it.
But you're making like 10 times more money than I am, so I gotta go like figure this out.
But I mean, that was very nice of you. I mean, that was very vulnerable of you to share. I mean, to have an experience like that, is probably fairly rare in the news business. But I mean, the truth of the matter, pulling back the curtain, is that does happen mostly to women and you actually experienced that firsthand. I mean, that had to be terrifying. I'm sure not only for you, but your parents. I mean, I could see how that would change moving forward. Like, a lot of us are sort of out there, myself, Angie Goff, but I don't think Angie's had that experience. I haven't. So it's easy for us to say that, but for you, yeah. I'm sure like you do know firsthand. I mean, that's where your parents like, you should quit TV.
No, but my dad, who's never been on a Greyhound bus, had no other way of like getting to me because it was like late in the middle of the night, and he like traversed half of Florida on a Greyhound bus like through the night to get to me because he was like, I can't remember what happened, like why we didn't have car. I don't know, it was like some weird situation, and he was like, no, and then he stayed with me for like 2 weeks until it all got settled and this person got taken care of, etc. But people are wild, and people, I think some don't understand boundaries.
Yeah.
Some don't fear consequences. And I think you see that in a greater scale on all sorts of things. And I'm certainly not the only person who's gone through this, or like, and hopefully, knock on wood. But I think those things change your perspective, as does like any big momentous occasion in your life. Like you having a child, like you're not who you were a year ago. Like anything like that kind of like, thankfully in my lifetime, I've had a pretty normal upbringing. My parents are relatively normal. So I never really have had moments like that. I mean, I think a few, but that's kind of one of the ones that sticks out.
Oh, yeah, 100%. I mean, that would stick out to anybody. That is a big life moment. Okay, so your parents don't tell you to quit the news business. Let's talk about growing up, because you are an only child. We've talked about that. And what is your background? Are you Cuban? Are you half Cuban?
No. I was born in Spain. I was
Oh,
born in Spain, and my parents, we immigrated to Miami when I was 4 years old. I was in pre-K. It was just like my dad, like super adventurous guy, just wanted a new beginning. And, Miami, like post-cocaine cowboys, was kind of like the new frontier. It was hot people, great weather, beautiful place. It was cheap. It was on the heels of Hurricane Andrew, so everything was raised. There was opportunity. And my dad's like, they speak Spanish there. Because I don't know English. Let's move. And my mom's like, well, she's 4 years old. She doesn't have to go to school. Let's go. Let's try it out. And then that's it. They've been there since.
Get out. How did your dad know about Miami? Did he watch it on a TV show? Did you read it?
I asked him that one day because I was like, why Miami? And he's like, well, I always want to go on vacation. So we went on vacation for like a month. But he was obsessed with Miami Vice and like Don Johnson and the whole like cigarette boat, like, Biscayne Bay. And I was like, are you kidding me? Like, that's the cheesiest like beginning to any book I've ever heard. And he's like, no, that's really why. And I was like, okay.
Oh my God.
So as a result of that, I'm a product of Miami, and I feel very much, although it's not in my DNA, like I do feel that's very much my identity. Like I associate, like I don't have, you guys rib me a lot for the movies and like the cultural stuff that sometimes I completely go over my head. And it's because I grew up in a different world, and I didn't grow up with parents who were raised here. I mean, like going to college and applying to college was like the most traumatic experience in my life. My parents had never been through that. They had no idea what the hell FAFSA stood for. They know nothing. So I was going through all these things for the first time. I mean, it worked out in the end. It's a little hyperbolic of me to say that it's dramatic, but it was like, it's doing things for the first time without your parent being like, this is what happens. This is how it goes. Like, I didn't even know what a dorm experience was like. They didn't. So everything was like new for us. Yeah.
Okay, so when your parents move here and you're 4 years old, your dad loves Miami Vice, did they have jobs, or was your father kind of this like entrepreneur, hard worker, and they were like, they just took their life savings, they came here and they were like, we're going to make it work?
That's exactly what it was. My dad was super entrepreneurial, and he was young. My mom, like I said, was 11 years younger than him. So she was like basically out of college with a baby and had like she'd been a teacher for a little bit. So they came here and they were like, let's make this work. And then he just started hustling and like side gigs here, and it turned into like a big export business and meeting people. And and that's kind of like everyone's story in Miami is like hustle till you make it,
Yep.
My mom is much more of an intellectual type. She's certainly like my father's intelligent. He's very well read. He comes from a very like educated family. So he has that background. My mom is like the nerd, like reads, knows like everything about literature, every poet, just like super intellectual, academic. She studied to write dictionaries. Like
that was going to be her job.
Yeah, I mean, it's philology. It's the study and the roots of words. And then because of that, like now she teaches like AP Latin. And she's, by the way, crushing it. Teacher of the year.
Oh, she is? Oh, my God. So she's
amazing.
Teaches at a high school in Miami?
Yep. She teaches at a high school. She also works for the College Board. So she writes AP exams. She's incredible. There's a total workhorse. I think I get, like, I'm a mix of them both. Like, I'm my dad's, like, hard ass, like, and my mom is too, like, they're both very type A people, like, they can give it to you. But my dad was the one, like, in kindergarten who, like, my mom always tells this story, drew a line in this, like, on the ground. It was, like, you know, fictional line, obviously. And he's like, don't let anybody cross that. And my mom's like, she's 5 years old. What are you doing?
Anyway.
So, like, that's me.
Wow. I mean, they really, tell us more about that. Because you say your mom was strict. Obviously, they had a very kind of ethic, background and kind of code of ethics that they lived by, that they instilled in you. So when you say they were strict, like could you, when you were in middle school and high school, could you go out and party until midnight? Like, did they trust you? No. Okay. How were they strict?
I mean, like that. Like, I wasn't allowed to do that stuff. Like, I could go to my friend's house and hang out there, but don't show up at a party. And certainly don't sneak out to a party, because that happened to me once. I snuck out, ended up jumping off of a bridge somewhere in Miami into the water with all my friends, showed up at my house drenched at like 3 a.m. I was grounded for like a year. Never left. My mother was like threatening. She's like, you're not playing soccer anymore, which is like the biggest threat to me back then, to take me off the soccer team. That was like my social scene. She's like, you're not doing that. You're not driving. I'm driving you. My high school is like an hour away from my house. So I went to this like magnet school. So I had to drive there. She's like, you're not driving. You're not doing that. Like, my mother was this kind of parent who said, if you do X and you defy me, like, she stuck to her guns.
Wow.
Whereas some parents, they don't have that kind of energy. I think it's because I was an only child. She was like, no, I said no, and no's no. And that's it. And like, there is no more arguing. She is the worst to argue against. Until this day, I'm like, I'm old. Like, leave me alone.
So did you ever have like a rebellious phase with them? I mean, that, I'm sure you went to school with a lot of kids that had a lot more freedom. So it must have been hard to watch that. Did you?
Yeah, I went to school with definitely that. A lot of rich kids. That was really interesting dynamic, like trying to like hang out in that, and I want to go to the Bahamas this weekend. And no, you're not going on some random guy's boat. You're 15 years old. Like, absolutely not. I was like, everybody else is doing it. Why not? I could not understand that. So definitely with my mother, and I think this is like in general for a lot of girls, my mother and I clashed. I mean, from 9th grade through basically my senior year of college, it was always like, there was just always that, because she was very protective of me and I didn't see that. To me, it was like her being strict. Like, she wrote me like a code of rules on a dry erase board my first day of college. And then I couldn't come to erase it because I was like, oh my God, like if I fail this, like I have failed her. It was like the weirdest like dynamic, but that kind of like kept me in line. And honestly, I think it kept me on a good track, because I definitely had some awakenings, like we all do along the way. And I was like, holy crap, like this could have ended far worse. Like we could have ended up dead, in jail, whatever.
We all have those definite like moments, right? You look back, you're like, how thank God everything like worked out the way it did.
I remember making out with a boy who was 15 in a car, and the cops like knocking on our window. And they were like, who are you? He's 18, you're 15. You're both going to jail, and I'm walking your house now. And I was like, oh my God, like talk about your heart sinking.
Just because you guys were making out? There was a cop that was.
I mean, this is like the kind of stuff I'm talking about. My mother would have killed me if that ever happened. I don't know how we got out of that, but we did.
Oh my God. What are they, strict down there in Miami? Lord, it's Miami. You think everyone's having sex with everyone? They were worried about you two making out?
No,
okay.
I was a good kid.
Do you feel like now that you're in your early 30s, though, do you think there was any downside to their parenting? I mean, that is a lot of pressure. And it's interesting. There's been many themes. I keep saying this on these episodes with you reporters, with all of you guys. A lot of the reporters had situations like you. They had kind of these very tiger moms, very strict moms. All right. Do you feel like there's been any like downside?
Well, my parents were strict, but my parents never put pressure on me to do anything. Like, they were never like, you have to be a lawyer, you have to be a doctor. My parents were always like, study whatever you want, do whatever you want. You want to go just to get a bachelor's, fine. You don't want to go to grad school, whatever. Go to school. Like, that was the main thing. And by the way, get a scholarship, because we're not paying for college. Like, that was something that I heard my entire life. My mom was like, you want to go to school? You better get a scholarship. And I did. I got a full ride. But and granted, it was an in-state public school, the best school in Florida. But still, it was expensive. And my mom's like, we're not paying for this.
Wow.
You are going to like get good grades, and you're going to, because you can do it, And I think they saw, and I think that kind of like, that gives you confidence and maybe makes you a little cocky at times. But it also shows you that you got to work your ass off for anything you want. So I think that more than anything, they taught me work ethic. I never had the pressure of like, you got to do piano, you got to do this, whatever. Like the only thing I ever got ribbed about was like my dad saying he spent thousands of dollars in tennis, and I never did anything with that. But I'm like, I can still play.
Yeah, you can still play. So you played.
Some.
You did a lot of sports in high school. You play sports.
Yeah.
You end up getting an academic scholarship.
Mm-hmm.
You go to college in Florida. Okay, so then tell us, how did you decide you wanted to become a journalist?
For me, it was September 11th when I was in 8th grade when September 11th happened. Yeah, and that really like shook my world. Like I think that was the first time that I knew what the hell I wanted to do. Like I was seeing all these like huge people who I didn't know who they were at the time, like at the epicenter of like what everyone was talking about. And it was like, I remember my mom telling me, she's like, if you don't turn off the television, like we're going to go have to see somebody, because I was obsessed. Like I wanted to know everything, what's happening. Wow. And I was in 8th grade. And I mean, I think that's kind of like a vulnerable, like emotional time period to kind of see people launching themselves from a burning building and explain like what is happening. And that was like the turning point, because I always thought there's a lot of lawyers on my dad's side, and I always thought I wanted to be a lawyer, but it was never like I'm dying to be a prosecutor. Like I think I have a little bit of that in me, but it's not like what my heart was on. And then after September 11th, I was like, that is what I wanted to do. Wow. So I think in high school I started to gear myself towards that, and I was like, how can I be a little bit smarter about it? And again, this kind of, I wish, like looking back now, I think about like we were talking about like being a parent, like thinking like I want to give my child the one thing that my parents couldn't give me, which was like the knowledge base of having grown up here. Because when people say this is the land of opportunity, there is no question that it is, but you need to understand it and know it. And like my parents didn't know that you could just call up a senator and intern there, and all of a sudden you have like 1,000 connections on Capitol Hill, like I wish I'd been more savvy then. But being 15, like how the heck was I supposed to know? Like I barely understood like the difference between the legislative and the executive branch, So I think then in high school I was like, well, I have to start like figuring out my path to be a journalist. Like, what can I do? And I started really paying attention to politics. So I studied political science. That was my major. I love politics. And for a while there, I was like, I want to be a political journalist. And I went up to New York and I did the whole like interning there. I ended up working in New York and living there for like 6 months before I graduated college, in the middle of like my degree. Haiti happened, the earthquake happened, and I found myself like a way to embed myself with some missionaries to go there and like cover it, because I was like, I'm a senior in college. I need to start building a reel. No one's going to want to see me outside of a gas station saying like they're price gouging here, or like outside of like a burnt down place that's like an arson as like a 20-year-old student. I need to go to Haiti because the earthquake just happened, and I need to figure this out and tell a good story. So I went out there. I was there for a week with a friend. I mean, we were using like tinfoil as like reflective paper to like reflect light off of me, and like, to try and make it look good. Like you just become really resourceful. And I applied for jobs, but I also knew that I didn't want to go to like, I don't know, Boise, Idaho, or like some really small town in the middle of nowhere.
I never did either. I was like, I went to school in Massachusetts, and then I was like, I'm moving to DC. Like, I'm not, people were like, you're going to have to start in New Hampshire. I'm like, fuck that. I am not moving into New Hampshire. Like,
yeah, I don't.
No offense,
70 degrees for me was cold, and then half of the country like lives in permanent 30-degree weather. Are you kidding me? I'm not doing that. So I took kind of the easy way out, which was like, well, I'm bilingual. I'm going to do Spanish television. So I got 2 jobs in Orlando and Vegas, and the regional like director was the news director at the Orlando station, and he kind of like stole me from the Vegas station, and I was like, this is 3 hours away from my house. Like, how can I turn it down as opposed to going halfway across the country?
Sure.
So I did 2 years there, and Univision at the time was joining with ABC, and it was the RNC, the Republican National Convention, was in Tampa. So everyone kind of got together, like Diane Sawyer was there, like all these bigwigs from ABC. And I took the opportunity to like film a bunch of stand-ups in English and like interview people and kind of like make a reel that wasn't really like a reel, but it was enough to get me in the door somewhere. And a news director in Orlando took notice, and he's like, this chick is fresh. She's green. I can pay her no money, and she'll come to Market 16 to do television. And I was like, yep, I will. But it was the morning schedule. It was the morning reporter, which anybody knows, the morning reporters, I mean, they really work because it's like constant. You're on the air nonstop. There's so much time to fill.
Yeah. And I mean, you're getting up at 2 a.m., 1:30 a.m. You're doing your own hair. You're doing your own makeup. Then you're going out and doing a stand-up at 4:30. It's very, oh my God, it's grueling. And you have to be mentally sharp at that hour, which is like brutal.
I was 22 and I'd never done, or 23, and I'd never done live television because I always worked for like, a tiny little like Univision thing in Orlando where we did like one newscast. So now I'm like every half hour, and I was getting ripped apart every single morning by my news director and like everyone. What are you doing? What are you saying? You're saying this wrong, blah, blah, blah. Because I was learning on the fly. I'd never done it. Like, yeah, I'd gone to college. Yeah, I went and did one stint, 2 years in Spanish television, but I'd never really done that. But my gosh, those 2 years, that was college times 1,000. I mean, I covered the Casey Anthony trial in Orlando, gavel to gavel. I covered George Zimmerman, gavel to gavel.
Wow. I mean, God, you forget how many historic, cases down there happened in Florida. Really.
God, it was like what the nation was talking about.
Which was more difficult to cover, Casey Anthony or George Zimmerman?
They were different. I would say that I was much more at the time like a part of the Casey Anthony trial because I had like a permanent seat in the courtroom. I was doing network packages for Univision, like national stories for them, and turning that in addition to my local. So I was there all the time. So I knew that case and the players in and out, Jose Bay, all these people. Zimmerman I covered, but once my shift was over, I went home.
Right.
It was like a different thing.
Okay.
They were both, without question, like the most grueling work I've ever done. I mean, you're there 12 hours a day. I remember getting the call that the verdict was in for Casey Anthony and having to I had like my toothbrush in my mouth and just get in the car and go and put on the lashes as you're going. Minnie Mouse shows up and you're just like trying to get like your whereabouts, and you have like hundreds of people out there protesting, freaking out. It was insane. And they both got off. So like after that, it just kept going. It was never ending.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like Casey Anthony and George Zimmerman just kind of ended, I mean, to some degree. I mean, people still are obviously very interested. Okay. So you're in Orlando for a couple of years, and then was the next jump to DC?
Yep.
Okay. How did you land at Fox 5?
So, when I was in Orlando, I was like, okay, I can't keep like faking it till I make it. Like I realized that I'm going to like need to make my first big jump. So I need to find an agent. So I did that, which in itself, as you know, I'm sure is like a shark fest. And you're like, oh my God, all these people, what am I going to do? And you're also paying them like half your salary. I mean, it ends up like paying itself in some weird way.
Yeah. They usually get you more money, which is awesome. But then, I mean,
well, they also find you jobs. They've got the connects. And I was like in my early 20s. I had no idea what the hell I was doing. And I was like, okay, now here comes Marina again. Like, I want to be a network star. I'm going to go to New York. I'm going to crush it. I'm going to do all these things. And everyone was like, slow your roll. Like, there are 1,000 people out there, prettier, smarter, all of the above, more than you, just as diverse, just as everything. So calm down. So that was like a reality check. And then it came down to two. It came down to a local station in New York, really prominent one, and WTTG. I went up to New York, and I remember calling my agent from the airport, like flying back, and I was like, oh my God, I feel like I just ran a marathon. I don't know if I can do this, which is very like unlike me, because I'm generally like, shit, I'm going to do it. I don't care what it takes. If I die trying, I will do this. But I was kind of defeated by the interview process. One of my questions I'll never forget in my interview is like, what are you going to tell the rest of the newsroom when they find out you're 26?
What? That was the question they asked you? What?
Equal opportunity. What is going on? Like, how is this even? You brought me here. You flew me up. You put me in a hotel. You sat me in your pitch meeting. By the way, the network took my pitch and my contact. I wasn't even an employee there, and they did the story. And now you're going to tell me that...
What an ageist question. That must have been like... Yeah. You must have been like...
I was in shock.
What did you answer? How did you...
The only way I know how to respond is like, well, I don't know. Maybe you should answer that question. You brought me here.
Is that what you said to them?
I mean, maybe a little bit not as like direct, but like essentially I was like, you tell me. I'm interviewing here, so clearly I'm doing something right. It was just a very bizarre. Like, you want to be aggressive with me? It's going to come right back. By the way, this person's no longer there, and that station has gone through a lot of like upheaval.
Oh, I think I know who it is too. Was it a woman? Yeah. Was it a woman?
Yeah, I think that's like the saddest part about it.
I know who it is.
Is that like a woman would see that in you and be like, oh, this girl can kick ass, and then bring you there and then try and like bring you down. Like, not, I wouldn't say humiliate, but she really tried to, like, show me, like, I don't know who you think you are coming in here. I'm going to give you this job. but you better think you're going to work your way for this. You're going to, and I was like, and I was ready to do that. Like, that's already my mentality. I'm a workhorse, like in my DNA. So for her to do that was, anyways, karma takes care of all that.
Well, it does. It always does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So
I really believe in that. So try to be a good person.
Absolutely. Now, okay, that makes me wonder, because I've asked this question a couple times and the answers have been interesting. Do you think, has it been harder to work for women or men in our business?
I've only ever worked for one woman, and she was the assistant news director. I never had any issues with her, got along with her fine. I find that you can generally, as a woman, be more honest with men as bosses.
Really?
I find that I can be more direct. Yeah.
Why do you think that is? What do you think it is about us that
I think because women, we understand, like, and I don't like playing the gender card because I don't really believe in a lot of it. I think that it's an excuse that a lot of women use often. And it shouldn't be used. Then it really like undermines when it's necessary, because it's like, that's the one, I'm a woman, that's why and it's not. But I do think that women are generally less empathetic of other women because we've been through it to some degree. Like, you may be dealing with a mother who has 3 kids, like, and she's busting her ass, and now you're coming in and you're like this 20-year-old spry kid, so I think that there's a little bit of that, whereas men, I mean, a man's not going to understand like my dealings with my uterus every month,
Yeah.
They just don't. So I do think that if you come from a place of honesty and you prove that you are not bullshitting, generally speaking, that they trust what you say, that there's no reason to question, Yeah. Whereas women sometimes push back a lot harder because they're like, hold on a second, I've gone through that, like, or a similar scenario. Like, I don't know if I buy it. So
That's
I think
so
in general,
fascinating.
In general, that's been my experience. Yeah.
And I think women, look, God, we've come so far in like 20 years, right? In 30 years and 50 years. But I think, we're still getting to that phase of like being top CEOs. And so I think there's still like, we still just need more practice, I think, and confidence in ourselves, to help other women.
Oh, yeah. I mean, without question. But I mean, you'd be surprised how many men lack confidence too. You're like, come on, man.
Oh, that's true. Oh my God,
I mean, so I think it cuts
true.
both ways. That's why, to me, like, the gender argument is kind of like a non-issue for me.
It is. I love that you say that, because it's so right. We could sit here and brainstorm 5 insecure men that are in positions of power, and we could do the same for women. You're right. You're right.
Yeah. And I think I have great relationships with I work with a lot of women, and they're honestly some of my closest peers. And I have had executive producers who aren't here, who are women, and my current executive producer who's a woman. And I mean, we sit at night and we just talk.
Yeah.
Like, and that's, I think, the beauty of women as opposed to men. Like, we're talkers, and like, that's how we like connect. Whereas with men, it's a little different. Again, and I think it comes from a place of like, honestly, and it's not malicious, it's just a lack of understanding. There's just,
Yeah.
I can't understand them and they can't really understand me in like a, I don't know, not just like an anatomy way, but in everything.
Yeah, really. Sure.
It's different.
So you have this very bizarre experience at this TV station in New York, and it sounds like you kind of knew your energy was off, if you sort of refer to that term. Like you knew it just wasn't a good fit, right? And you'd come to TTG. You obviously had a different experience, and you tell your agent, I want to take the job at Fox 5 in DC.
Yeah, I mean, I walked into TTG and I was like, this is chaotic. This is where I thrive. This is my people. Like, you know who you are and where you belong immediately, I think, in any like scenario.
Yeah.
Like, you can just feel if it's off or it's not, even if it's not like a perfect mesh, like you can tell like what's like, energy is energy, right?
Yep.
And you either know it and you believe it or you don't. So I walked into Fox 5 and I was like, this is like, these are my people. Everyone's crazy. It was like chaos. And by the way, the news director who hired me and said, I'm leaving tomorrow. It's my last day. What? And I was like, okay, this is going to be, I'm in for like the ride of my life. This is going to be awesome.
So our girl Dana hires you and says, oh, by the way, tomorrow I'm out.
Yeah. And she's like, here's my Metro card. Take yourself back to the airport with my Metro card. I'm like, okay. And then I'll talk to you later. And I was like, okay, great.
Gee, thanks. Okay,
thanks for lunch. Oh, by the way, my dress split on the way to interview with Dana. I had a massive hole in my ass. Some lady at the taxi line at Reagan tried, because I had to take a sick day at work. You know how these things are. Like, it's impossible. Like, you got to be so coy because someone's going to spot you. And next thing you know, it's like on one of these dumb blogs. And it really shouldn't be like what it is. Like, people should be allowed to like continue their careers and not fear repercussions, but it's not like that.
Yeah.
So I had to come in inconspicuously, like barely like walk around the newsroom. But true story. I'm at the taxi line at Reagan, and some woman's like, ma'am, I'm sorry, but you have a hole in the back of your dress. And I was like, oh. And of course, I mean, if you've seen me in person, like there's a lot in the back. So I'm like, oh my God, this thing is going to like literally rip through. And next thing you know, I'm going to be like, thank God there wasn't OnlyFans back then, but that would have been quite the sight. So as I'm like thinking, like, what do I do? She offered me a Band-Aid to figure it out. I was like, that's lovely, but I don't think the Band-Aid's going to do that.
No.
The trick, not for me. So I get in the cab, and as we're driving up Wisconsin, I will never forget this place. Like up in Glover Park, there's like Georgetown Valet, whatever, dry cleaners on the corner. And I said, sir, could you stop here and wait for me? And I ran inside, and this, God bless this lady. I showed her, I was like, not in tears, but I think she could see how frazzled I was. I'm like, this is for a job interview. I need this job, please. She stuck me in a closet. She asked me to get naked. I gave her my dress. She sews it like with the machine. I put it back on. I'm like the entire time, like holding my breath, making sure that like my ass doesn't split this thing again. I walk in, I like sit with Patrick, our general manager, for like 2 seconds because he was like going to the Nats game. They were in the playoffs, so he's like, "Hi, nice to meet you." I'm like,
boss
okay,
is like, "Oh, sorry, welcome, but I gotta go to the Nats playoff."
I think everybody had their minds made up. They were like, "This girl fits in. It'll work." And that was it. And then I flew back that same day because I didn't even stay up here. And I was like, you know what? I don't know what it was, but again, like even with all that chaos and everything that happened, comparing it to the other station that I'd already been to, I was like, this is where I want to be. And plus, like, again, it goes back to like the politics and all that stuff. I was like, it feels like more me.
Oh my God.
And I always thought I was going to end up in New York, but so
wow. Well,
story.
Your career's still really young. I mean, is that the goal? Do you still think you want to do that? I mean, you love politics. And I feel like you and I had this conversation because that was so interesting to me because I don't think I'd ever heard anybody say this, but I thought you told me at one time you wanted to host 48 Hours. And I was like, I don't think I've ever heard anyone tell me that. Did you tell me that?
I don't know if I said that, but I could see myself in like something like that. Like I love that stuff. 48 Hours, Dateline, like any of that. But I also like an interview format, like having anybody name any politician and being in a split screen and just like I'm not scared of asking questions that people are going to be pissed off about. That does not at all scare me. I know that there are people that want to continue relationships and be friendly, and I applaud those people because I think there's an art to that as well. I'm not that person. And it doesn't come from a place of like, I don't like you. It comes from a place of like, people put you in office, you're paid by the taxpayers, answer the damn question, period. So I think that when I first came here, that was kind of like my mentality. And that was a little bit like what I was doing. I'm not sure that really worked. I think it works more in like a New York type of environment where people are like just brash and like curt and that's how they are. And I think that's the kind of media. It took me a little bit to understand like why the hell like I was being like so maligned. I was like, my God, is it really that bad? I don't feel like I'm asking you like anything that out of left field.
That's so good. What do you but what do you think that but what is the way you're supposed to ask in DC? What's the vibe here?
It's just very, everyone's very nice and everyone's very courteous. And I think there's a place for that. And I would agree with that. I think that there's also like a way of asking a question. But I think when you're up against like, say, X problem or controversy, like you've got to face the music. And people here get really scared of like questioning authority. It always like perplexed me. I'm like, why? Like, why are we afraid of people? I also think like where I come from in the mindset of like Banana Republic, Miami, like it builds like respect, if you can like tete-a-tete with someone, like there's gotta be, but instead people here were like, their feelings were hurt. And I'm like, what? Why are your feelings hurt? You're a damn politician. Like my feelings aren't hurt when you like cuss me out. Why are you, I don't know. It was very hard for me to understand.
God, that is a great observation about this city. I do feel like it's a very sensitive city. You're right. People get their feelings hurt here a lot.
Free things. I'm not saying you have to be an asshole and walk in there and like, just like, eviscerate people, but ask the damn hard questions. Like if they can't answer those questions, then who can?
Great point. Oh my God. Okay, Marina, I love this interview. I mean, look at you. You said we'd have nothing to talk about. We're 40 minutes in. I still have like 25 questions. Okay, so what would be the goal now? Like I mean, you've had a lot. You've been here several years, right? In DC, how many years at Fox?
I'm on my 8th year now. I cannot believe it. I mean, it's been a while. I mean, it's been a crazy, amazing, beautiful ride, and I've had huge learning moments without question. From being a reporter to then kind of like getting onto like a more like political crime beat to then walking away from that. And then, we have so much news and so many shows that they were like, who's this girl that's out there on the streets? Just bring her in. Let's see if she can read a prompter. So they put me there and then they were like, she's not that bad. And then you start like coming into yourself. Like that takes time. It's like everything. Like you don't just become Oprah the next day, right? Not that I'm just like making, it takes parallel. You don't turn into who you are overnight. It's like an evolution. So you start little and then you work your way up. And honestly, like I feel very blessed to have, and if you know me, you know that I don't say things like that easily, to have this opportunity that people trusted me and they were like, I think you can do this. So I love everything I do. Like every show is in its, I mean, don't get me wrong. Some days it's a hamster wheel, like every job. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and be like, everything's amazing. I love it. But I genuinely like the opportunity I have. Not everybody comes across that. And this station is very different in the way and it took me a while to learn that too. Like you can be who you are too. Like we go on like it or not. And sometimes you have opinions that people don't agree with. Or like whoever's sitting next to you, but then the show's over and you move on and you're still friends and everything's great.
Yeah.
And I like that. I think that that's an incredible opportunity. I think that's where this medium is moving. If you look at the numbers, like people are watching less news than ever before. So you've got to turn, and I'm not going to sit on this conversation. I'm sure you've had this conversation with Patrick 1,000 times. You've got to figure it out and do something different and try it. And if it doesn't work, then try something else until you hit it. And I think that we have come, there's shows like It or Not, there's shows like The Final Five that are very different and that people like to watch. And it's hyper local sometimes. And I think that speaks to the community more so than in these broad, just weird things that nobody can really relate to. They just see this figurehead who's earning $10 million a year and really can't talk to you because they're not riding the metro. They don't know about traffic. They don't know about the parking situation. So while it seems like menial things, they're meaningful things to everyday people. I like that.
Why do you think that people are watching a lot less news on a local level and on a national level? And I've talked to a lot of the reporters that have been interviewed for this podcast about this, that when you guys go out, you are in a vulnerable state. A lot of people believe a lot of things they hear about the media being terrible. But what's your take? Why do you think that people are watching less news?
I don't get caught up in that so much. They hate the media. I honestly don't even think that's so true. People love to say that they hate the media, but then they consume media all day long. So let them hate it. They're still consuming it. I don't care. I mean, they're on their phone all day. They're checking news apps. So you hate it, but you're still consuming it, right? It's like when you go overseas and then they make fun of you for being American, but all they do is smoke Marlboro Lights and drink Coke. Well, you can't hate America that much if that's all you're doing is consuming American products.
They do too. They tell you how much they hate you, but everything. But they're sitting there wearing Tommy Hilfiger. You're like, okay,
right.
Yeah.
And then they just watch Friends, and it's the favorite character is Rachel. Get out of my life! What are you saying? You're crazy.
Oh,
so
God.
That to me is just an overused. Oh, give me a break. I think the problem is that we just have our phones have changed everything.
Yeah.
You have everything at your disposal. You want to check a score. If you want to watch live something, then you put it on. And I think sports is a good example of what people are going back to a little bit and watching. But no one is watching the same story 7 times on any news channel, really. Yeah. I mean, if you look at cable news, nobody would think that CNN, for example, which was for a long time, the flagship of breaking news and anything big that's happening. Well, because now you can get all that on Twitter firsthand. The video that they're putting on CNN is already on Twitter from the person who shot it.
Yeah, totally.
So I think that's the problem.
You referenced you worn many hats, and I do think that's one of the beauties of Fox 5, right? I think,
yes.
And they've given me that opportunity too over the years to try different things, kind of to find your own way, right? Which is very unique. Most news stations don't do that. But a lot of people, and especially me, know you from your role on Like It or Not. You're great on Like It or Not. You co-anchor with Jim. So when they sort of selected you guys, because the show went through some transformations.
Yeah.
Did you and Jim kind of already have a great rapport, or did that sort of just just kind of magically happen? How'd that come about?
No, I mean, gym. So I started like a year. I got a year on gym.
Oh.
Um, and I remember when he first came in, I was like, this is how you track. And Jim is funny because Jim is someone who like adores what we do and adores like I mean, I call him like the old nosy grandmother, just knows everything about every station. He really is like, oh my gosh, where me, like, I do not give a crap. Like, unless I'm working there or like dealing with this person, I'm always asking him, I'm like, who's that person? And he just like finishes my sentences because he knows like literally to every, like the very last person at every station. So he, I think, is very opposite to who I am, and in a weird way, like we're complementary to each other. We're kind of like siblings. Like we argue in a very like non-confrontational manner. Like we maybe don't see eye to eye, but it's not like we hate each other after that. And I think like everyone, like you have a bad day and you're kind of like, oh my god, this guy, whatever. But like there is without question like tons of respect, but I think overall like a very protective nature. And I think that's like where the sibling thing, like if someone from somewhere else were like Jim, whatever, like I would immediately defend him because he's my partner in crime, right? Like at the station. And we've had like, I mean, oh my God, one day he'll tell you the parking story. That is like the epitome of our relationship.
Well, you have to tell it now. You brought it up. What's the parking story?
I mean, it's not a big deal. I maybe a couple years ago I wouldn't have told it, but now I think we both laugh. Like we had both started, and Jim had now worked his way up to an anchor, and I was still like, you know, hitting the streets and working my ass off. So we come into the old lot at Fox 5, which I'm sure you're familiar with, the parking lot. You know, I mean, it wasn't like perfect. I couldn't even read the signs or the lines on the parking lot. There was no parking spots because it was undergoing like renovations or some sort of construction. So I just parked in an open spot. I went downstairs, go to the editorial meeting. I'm in there. Jim shows up late. I don't know how long it was, but he was late. And then I'm on my phone while I'm in the meeting, and I get an email from Patrick's secretary. And it says,
our boss, by the way, for people.
Yeah, I don't know who the secretary was at the time, but someone who like deals with like administrative stuff like that, right? Hi, Marina, can you move your car? You parked in Jim Loke's spot. And I look over across the room, and I'm like, that mother, he couldn't tell me that I parked in a spot. He sent an email to our general manager's secretary asking me to move my car. So then when the meeting was over, he goes out another door and doesn't come to me either. And now I'm like, oh, this is not. And in true Marina fashion, I just laid right into him in front of everyone in the newsroom. It was pretty epic. But I think that was the day. Well, then at night when I walked back to my car after like probably working till like 12:30 or 1 a.m. because I was a reporter, right? So I came back, I had roses on my windshield, like as a mea culpa. Yeah.
Oh my God.
I think that like that like turned into like, I don't know. It's a relationship of respect. And I always like, if I see like there's a problem on the horizon, I'm always like, hey Jim, by the way, I want you to be aware. Like I think we protect each other in that way. And we're partners in crime. Like we have a show that we do together. Not every day is a great day for either of us. And you know, people go through shit, and that's really hard, is like anchoring with someone else who may be going through something, or you are, and you both have, I mean, that's the difficult part of television, is that everybody has personal lives, shit happens, but you always have to put on the same front.
Yeah.
Like I can't be thinking about, you know, my dog who died.
Yeah.
And that's like a sad reality of like television, right? Because you are like in some way acting before the camera and for an audience, and you're dealing with crap. So I think in that way, like we're protective of each other.
Did your dog just die?
No, I don't have a dog. I'm just saying that.
Like,
I didn't want to kill off like a family member, so I just thought of something I didn't have.
Oh my God. Marina, this interview has been so juicy. I love it's so funny because, you know, Angie Goff, who you're good friends with, she said to me, because I was like, oh, you know, what do I need to know about Marina? And she was like, well, you know, it's funny because her sign is a Cancer sign, and she gives off that she's so tough, but she's really this softie. And it's so true. You have this just hard shell, but just this beautiful, soft interior that I love.
You're so sweet.
Okay, yeah. We're doing rapid fire questions at the end, and I have so many for you. So, do you see yourself becoming a mom?
Yes.
I do too, because I just feel like you genuinely love kids and you're interested, and and of course you'd be an amazing mom. So, no, what do you say? Like you are an only child. Do you think you're having one, or do you think you're having like 5?
No way 5. Let's start with 1. In my head, 1. I guess if like more happened, whatever. But I like honestly the dynamic I had with my parents as a family unit. I truly really love it. Like when people are like, "Oh, you're an only child. I'm so sorry." I'm like, I don't think you understand what that means. Like I loved being an only
You
child.
did, really?
Oh yeah, yeah. It was great. I didn't have to fight with anybody. I didn't have to fight over anything. I had undivided attention, you know. And as I got older, there wasn't like, okay, we have to make, you know, your sister needs this, your brother needs that. It was me. It was my problem. I mean, there are downsides to it. You know, you got to take care of some heavy shit by yourself with your parents. But at the same time, like, you know, sibling rivalry exists, and it's not always pretty. And it just makes things easier.
Any regrets so far in your career? I mean, you're very young. Your career's been amazing.
I mean,
Give us one. Like what?
No, I mean, yes, tons. I think there was, you know, a big story that I covered many years ago that just did not go the way it should have gone. You know, and I said my piece with the people that needed to hear that.
I forgot about that. Why didn't we do a whole 10 minutes on that? We have to start the interview again. I have to ask you about that.
I don't know if the lawyers would clear that, but no, I mean, just honestly, you never, in those situations, I learned the lesson that it's better to handle it privately with the people that need to hear it and how it goes. And that story is, oh my God, it wasn't, trust me when I tell you, it was not just me. There was like so many hands at play. But
okay,
anyway.
look, just to give the audience, now look, if people probably Google you, maybe the story still comes up. But we're talking about, it's the Seth Rich story, right, is what we're basically referencing, right? Who's the young guy. And I don't even know, have they ever solved his murder? I don't know. They have not. Okay, so there was some controversy, right, about a source that you know wasn't vetted right properly, and then that blowback came back on you and some other individuals, right? So So you regret the part of what of you feel like you should have directly apologized to his family, like you shouldn't have.
And I did. I mean, I did through like family intermediaries because I think that they were going through a lot and they were using those people. But that also was the fall of the source, was that source was a family intermediary.
Yeah.
So I think that there were a lot of things at play, and it was hard to vet who was who. And when someone represents themselves as such and is being used as such on other stations, and you've corroborated with some of the family members, you know, I just think that in that moment, other people at play, not our party, and I mean that as like the television group, like Fox 5, and not the family, but the people that were in the middle were trying to benefit for themselves. And I think we all fell party to that, sadly. And it didn't shake out the way I wanted to. And I think what got lost in all of that is that there was like an incredibly grieving family, because that's never easy, ever. A death is never easy. Add to that a mysterious murder for someone who had their entire life ahead of them. And then you have people who
It's gonna come back. Oh God, come back.
Long story short, I think that moments like that really change how you act, and it really, and for a good way. Like it makes you second guess everything. And I think that we need a lot more of that. And I think since that story, you've seen that repeated 1,000 times in other networks, at other stations, because we're living in a world of like duplicitous people who have ill intent and who don't care if there's a grieving family, who don't care what people are feeling. That to them is irrelevant. They just care about themselves. And I think that shows, like, I don't want to believe that's who people are, but there's a lot of those people out there.
So did you learn ultimately from that, like, go with your gut, or like double, triple check sources? Like what did you, or it's such a hard one. Cause you know, to your point, you were almost kind of like one of the first, like we've seen it a lot now, right? Like I feel like the Kobe Bryant story, right? The ABC reporter.
Well, Jussie Smollett, like all that stuff. Like,
Jussie Smollett, right. But you were sort of one of the first, right? To like then have it publicized. So what was the biggest personal, like for you? Is it I'm going to be a different journalist, different way, or you think just being wiser to people's motives?
Wiser. I think that like that matures you very quickly.
It
makes you like, you know, I was very young and I was a go-getter, and I think it kind of puts everything on pause and pumps the brakes, because you're scared. Like when you play with fire, you will get burned. It is inevitable. The question is like how burned and when, how soon. And I think when I was a bulldog reporter, aggressive and just going and constant. And that was one of those moments where I think that like I thought I'm talking to the right people. I communicated with the family. But then there were people at play in the middle that just they were liars.
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And that did not shake out well. And anyways, I mean, there's definitely like learning curves in everything you do. And I think that as long as you can relay that to the appropriate person and they understand what happened, I think that, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and you've certainly, I mean, you've learned from it. We all learn from, we all have tons of mistakes. You've gone on just to be an amazing anchor, contributor, reporter, all those good things. Okay. Switching gears to something lighter. Who's your idol, by the way? Do you have an idol? Do you look up to anybody? Do you look up to anyone?
You're such an arrogant piece of crap, Marina.
You're like myself. That's it.
Like I always say this when like we idolize so many of like the Kardashians and all these people or whatever. Like to me, like real people. Like I watch a show like Lenox Hill on Netflix and I see these like neurosurgeons like literally saving lives, like blood vessels and brains. Like these are like the people that I'm like, I need more. I want to hear more. Like how do you do that? Because I want to be like you. And like my only skill is talking to Sarah. Like I don't have skills. You know what I mean?
I'm the same way, girl. I'm the same. Like I want to be a fucking brain surgeon. Like that's what it's all about. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So like I see people who've gone through like really hard shit in their life and I'm like, you are like who I idolize, but to everyone else, it's a no name, right? So like that doesn't get any play. And that's kind of like the sad, like, I guess the cynic and why I am like the way I am.
I didn't know. I just wondered if you looked up to like Diane Sawyer, but I mean, I loved your story of 9/11. I mean, so many that impacted, of course, not just the people that were killed that day and their families, but all of us. And inspired isn't the right word, but it really moved people to do different things. So, okay, last question. Does it bother you that you're on Celebrity Wiki Feet with only a 4 out of 5 rating for your feet?
Well, here's the thing. Like, this goes back to the story of how cheap I am. Like, Angie struts in, like, a different pair of, God knows, name an Italian designer that she can't even pronounce every day. I wear the same pair of shoes for maybe, like, 12 months out of the year. Yeah. And then by June, people are like, okay, Marina, stop wearing the Uggs. Like, it's over. Like, you can switch out into, like, a different. So I'm not surprised by that. I'm really, like, I should try a little harder. That's honestly a tweet that I get a lot. Like,
they ding you on your feet. They really do ding you on your feet. They want you. They seem to want you to buy more shoes. And how big are your feet, by the way? People are also obsessed. They feel like you have huge feet.
They do. Not as big as Angie. That girl's got like an 11. I got like an 8.5, 9.
Oh, that's not bad. Okay, that's not bad.
I would like to clarify my height because I always get that I'm like 5'2", 5'4". People, I'm 5'7".
Yeah, you are tall. You are tall. You are tall. Marina, you are just... Look, I can't say enough about you. I adore you. And I wish I got to hang out with you more. I love you too. I love working with you and Jim. You guys have just such a great dynamic. You come to it's rare that a reporter and a journalist can do a magazine show and come and play and almost go into an improv style. And you and Jim do it so well. So I love you. Where can people follow you? Not that you post because we know you're private and you revealed why, which makes a lot of sense.
Feet pictures. No, I'm just kidding. Marina Marraco DC on Instagram, Marina Marraco on Twitter. That's all I got. I don't have a website. I don't have anything else. Pretty soon I'm going to start a Cash App. No, just kidding.
Yes, you should. I'm not giving you.
Do you think my OnlyFans would be successful? Like if I didn't show anything?
Yeah.
Like if it was just like a picture of me like in a sweater?
But now I know it's a cheap journalist with a split crotch. I mean, that's really what you're into.
Listen, but there's a lot of zeros in my bank account.
I know there are. I'm not Venmoing you $1. Forget it. Anyway, look, we love you. Bye, Marina. Thank you.
Thank you.